Our story today is a mysterious and terrifying story about the disappearance of a young girl named Laken Riley in a small town amidst a state of terror and tension. We will talk about Laken Riley, a young nursing student with dreams and ambitions. How did her life suddenly become a nightmare? And what did the investigations reveal about her fate? Laken Riley was born on January 10, 2002, to her mother Allison and her father, Jason Riley. She grew up in Marietta with her younger sister Emma, a beautiful part of Georgia. Laken Riley was 22 years old, and she had a passion for sports and reading, and she was preparing to celebrate her 23rd birthday. She was a diligent student at the University of Georgia, living in a small town known for its calmness. She was a beloved character among her colleagues and friends, and her relationship with them was close, especially with her best friend Chloe, who knew everything about Laken. Laken was cheerful and always put a smile on the faces of those around her. She had a deep passion for nursing and caring for others, which eventually led her to enroll at the University of Georgia, and then in the nursing program. But before that could happen, she suddenly disappeared without a trace. One day in February, Laken went for her usual evening run around campus. She was an avid runner and went to this trail at least twice a week, so she knew this trail nicely, and suddenly disappeared in a place she thought was safe at all times. Her friends were quick to report her missing. They knew she hadn't logged into the Find My Friends app for over an hour. She had told her friend Chloe she would be back in an hour, but an hour passed, then two, and she still hadn't returned. Her friends became concerned when they noticed she had been on this run longer than usual. They became worried after checking the app and realizing that she hadn't moved in over an hour. Their concern grew when they texted and called her to no avail. So they decided to search for her all over campus. They left the house at 11 o'clock and walked along the road before finally finding one of her hearing aids. So they notified the police. The police used sniffer dogs and drones to search the nearby woods. Officers finally found Laken. According to the field officer's report, they had only been searching for 11 minutes after arriving in the inner fields. Officer Kenneth Maxwell was exploring the woods along the road when he saw her lying unconscious on the ground. He called out to her but got no response. He checked her vital signs but found no pulse. Her injuries were very obvious. Unfortunately, things were not looking good for her. About an hour later, a forensics team arrived before her death was declared a suspected homicide. Her friends were shocked to learn the terrible news, but ominous witness reports of a hooded figure began to trickle in just as quickly as the news of her death. The story began when another woman claimed to have seen a man wearing a dark blue jacket, black gloves, and a hood. As she walked by, she noticed how he stood still, seemingly not paying attention to her. He was standing by the lake, apparently distracted by his phone. Investigators investigating this information began examining all surveillance cameras in the immediate area to identify Laken as she ran and see if anyone else was following her. The surveillance footage of this man begins several hours before her death. At approximately 6 a.m., a man wearing dark shoes, pants, a dark jacket, and a gray bag exited the apartment complex. The apartment complex is located just minutes away from where Laken's body was found. The surveillance footage shows the man walking around the area as if searching for something or someone. Minutes later, he can be seen trying to force his way through the front door of a student apartment complex. The front door did not belong to Laken herself, but to another young female student. She was in the bathroom then, and the curtains in her ground floor bedroom were open. The man then tried to force himself in for several minutes before eventually giving up and briefly walking away. Over the next 56 minutes, he returned to her front apartment 5 times to try to open it. At 7:57 a.m., the young woman who lived there finally realized someone was at her front door. She called the police to report the incident. When she noticed the man, he fled the area. Just over an hour later, at 9:05 a.m., Another surveillance camera captured Laken walking along Long Mill Street toward the bus stop, dressed all in black and holding a phone, then heading east toward the lake. But that's not all investigators would find. Some evidence Laken had intentionally left behind was uncovered. We don't know exactly what was going on at the time. But just 6 minutes later, she made an ill-fated phone call to the police department. Although she said almost nothing during the call, a male voice could be heard saying, "Okay," in about 50 seconds, before the call was eventually cut off. East Anglia police tried to contact her again a minute later, and again at 9 o'clock. Both times they failed. The fact that Laken did not answer the phone suggests that what happened to her was likely horrifying at that moment. Call records also indicate that she had spoken to her mother just minutes before the call was made. It was a horrific turn of events. At the crime scene, investigators observed multiple slash marks on her torso, a single slash mark under her underwear, and severe injuries to the left side of her head. A bloody rock was found nearby. Laken was pronounced dead at the scene after emergency responders arrived, and based on data they found from her smartwatch, her heart had stopped beating. At 9:30 a.m., despite the short time frame, police already had surveillance footage, multiple witness reports, and a phone call. But that wasn't enough for them, so they decided to dig further, literally through dumpsters. What they found was a turning point in their investigation. On the evening of her death, a police officer was searching through the dumpsters outside the Azulik apartment complex. When he looked into one of the dumpsters, he came across something rather odd. It was a black jacket, and that jacket appeared to be stained with blood. Upon closer inspection, he realized that there was dark hair wrapped around one of the buttons. This was very suspicious because, especially in a moment like this, it would be extremely unusual for someone to throw their blood-stained jacket into the dumpster without wrapping it. Also, the officers surveying the area noticed that a neighbor's door camera was looking into the dumpster. Of course, this could be very helpful in determining who had thrown it in the first place. After asking to look at the camera footage, they found exactly what they were looking for. The same man who was captured on the earlier surveillance footage was seen putting the jacket in the trash can at 9:43 a.m. This was just 15 minutes after Laken's heart stopped beating. A key piece of information here was the hat he was wearing. This footage also led officers to another key piece of evidence, because he was later recorded throwing something into nearby bushes. After tracking the footage to the bushes, they found a pair of bloody gloves. Investigators ran DNA on the gloves and jacket. Forensic analysis soon confirmed, unfortunately, that they were indeed Riley's. It was also determined that the hair found wrapped around one of the buttons on the jacket was her hair. Another door camera in the area showed the same man walking back to the trash can with a cellophane bag. About 3 minutes later, he was seen returning without the bag. Investigators now have a profile of a very suspicious-looking man, but they don't know who he is, at least not at this time. So in response, they announced the Beyond Surveillance campaign at the University of Georgia and posted this photo of the man next to a dumpster with the public, so they wouldn't have to look far at all. Based on this information, the officers decided to pay him a short visit. With their body cameras recording every moment, the officers arrived at the property the next day. You could see their concern growing with each passing minute. After knocking on the front window, they realized that Jose was asleep. It soon became apparent that no one in the apartment could speak fluent English, including his brother Diego. Since this was a sensitive issue, they needed to make sure all of their questions were answered correctly. After calling an officer who could speak Spanish, they finally started asking questions. This was fortunate, as the silence allowed the officers to notice the many obvious injuries covering Jose's body, including scratches on his arms, wrists, hands, and even his neck. When Jose was asked about the injuries, he claimed that they were simply from the cold and just scratches. However, One of the officers noticed that he was bleeding from some of the wounds, indicating that they were recent, perhaps just a day old. They also noticed that Diego was wearing the same hat that was seen in the surveillance footage. Additionally, Jose's green card had 2 different birth dates, suggesting that it may have been fake. With enough troubling information, Jose was arrested on suspicion of murder and taken into custody. But the question now is, who exactly is Jose Ibarra? What did the police know about him, and could he have really killed Riley? Unfortunately, diving into his profile will provide no relief. And this man was corrupt and stupid. Jose, also known as Borzuela, was a 20-year-old who entered the United States illegally in September 2022 and made his way across the southern border near El Paso, Texas, before being apprehended by federal authorities. It turns out that Jose had a very troubled past, filled with multiple arrests by federal and state officials in different jurisdictions. In September 2023, he was arrested in New York City and charged with misconduct, in a manner that resulted in injury to a child under the age of 1 and not having a driver's license. The following month, police arrested him and his brother, who was reportedly a member of a Venezuelan gang, on multiple theft charges. They were found with stolen goods from a local Walmart, but were later released. It is pretty clear that Jose had not learned his lesson by December 2023. Just 2 months before Laken was killed, he had obtained a warrant for his arrest after he failed to appear in court on a Georgia shoplifting case. He was a scoundrel with a lengthy criminal record, and now he was in the spotlight for murder. The prosecution painted a horrific picture of what happened that morning. Laken was out for her usual jog on campus when Jose, wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, a black hat, and kitchen gloves, approached her and allegedly blocked her path when she tried to call 911 and attacked her. At that point, Law fiercely resisted and scratched Jose's hands, arms, and neck in a desperate attempt to escape. He is believed to have then tried to pull her shirt over her neck before proceeding to assault her, but Laken was not prepared to go without a fight. When she resisted, he tragically strangled her before hitting her several times over the head with a rock. He then dragged her body into the woods. Laken's defense team argued that all of the evidence was circumstantial and speculative. They warned the judge that emotions were driving the case, not the facts themselves. They would also file several motions to change the venue of the trial, which were denied. They also tried to exclude several pieces of evidence, suggesting that they believed this legal battle would be very difficult for them to win. It was clear to everyone that the ball was in the prosecution's court, and this case appeared straightforward from the start. Jose was caught on camera in the immediate vicinity by multiple cameras, which was corroborated by numerous eyewitnesses. Additionally, there was ample evidence that he had direct contact with Laken. This included finding Jose's left thumbprint, which was found on her cell phone. His DNA was collected from under her fingernails, and his voice matched the voice heard on the phone call. Laken's phone call with the police and multiple injuries were consistent with defensive wounds from the fingernails that were inflicted, and his DNA was under them. The trial was heavy and very difficult for her family, as her mother had to leave the courtroom several times throughout. Fortunately, the trial did not last long. In contrast to previous cases that took several weeks, Jose's trial lasted only 4 days. He was ultimately convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No surprise, and a miserable end.